Come on, Nate!
92.
Feel the burn, Nate!
93. 94.
Yes, Nate!
95.
Come on, Nate! Nate!
96.
Nate!
97.
Nate, come on! Nate!
98.
Come on, Nate!
99. 100. Help.
What's wrong, Nate? Usually you get to 500.
I'm sorry, Cetus. It's nothing.
No, Nate, what's wrong?
I've just been thinking about women's roles in the 1920s.
You know, Nate, I don't even think being a woman in the 1920s was that bad.
Oh, it was bad, Cetus. Oh, real bad.
Alright, Nate, get up. It's the math turn. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, Nate.
Okay.
1, 2. Oh no! Oh!
I can't see this. He's actually unconscious.
The company's at an all-time low. I think we're gonna have to call bankruptcy.
I'm heading home.
Oh, my head. Oh, where am I? Wait a second. Oh my god, I'm a woman in the 1920s. Look, honey, I made a pot pie.
I hate your papa.
I was at work, working all day, and you've done nothing at all. I fixed the light switch, I cleaned the floors, I even cooked you a pot pie. A woman voicing her opinion.
Women at this point had very little to call their own. They truly were following the harsh stereotype of cleaning, cooking, raising children, and overall they were seen as child bearers.
Push me through there. Harder. He's coming. I can see the head.
I shall name her Nate.
Only the husband was expected to provide for the family and make the big decisions, and divorce was unheard of and difficult to carry out. They were expected to clean the house and keep it tidy while the man was at work, cook for the husband when he returned from work, and keep main watch of the children and tend to their needs.
Though the housewives worked hard for most of the day, they still had consistent social gatherings with other women and mothers while the men were gone, usually playing card games.
Even when women were with the men, they were expected to listen silently and speak only when spoken to. Women were always expected to have an air of modesty in public, where ladies smoking or drinking was strictly off limits.
I mean, it's
Brittany's dress didn't even go up to her knees. What even is that?
Oh my god.
Hey,
Yeah.
is that a woman smoking?
Oh no.
Oh yeah, you.
No!
You
Dirty man.
Those women who didn't find husbands were called spinsters, a term meaning one not worthy of a husband, and those who did find one were almost concerned as their objects or property. Jobs were mainly for men, and careers in political roles and law enforcement were completely out of the question for a woman. Even if women worked, they would usually do so in a profession like nursing or teaching. Most ladies didn't even get a higher level of education, and if they did, it was at a private college or girls-only institute.
Hey, you want to see a joke?
Sure.
Political opinions and voting were a fantasy to women, and their rights were minimal. But the 1920s was maybe the most important time for women's rights in all of history. World War I was a huge turning point in women's roles. Since the men were off to war, women had to take the reins of factory jobs and work professions they were originally considered incapable of doing.
Goodbye, Papa.
I love you, Nate!
I love you too, Papa.
By the time the war ended, women were expected to go back to being housewives, but to the female populace, they realized that they had potential and their eyes were open to what changes needed to happen. The 1920s would be the years of women's rights. As the decade would move forward, women would pick up the flag and fight for what they deserved. A canon of oppression from generations of being told they weren't equals to men, being treated like second-class citizens, being put below others, was about to explode, changing the lives of women forever.
I am no second-class citizen. I deserve to be treated.
The North Carolina opponents of women's suffrage claimed that women are not the equal of men mentally, and in terms of voting right, said it would take them out of their proper sphere of life. But not all of women across America were in the same position. The roles and rights varied throughout the different regions. Wyoming was the first state to approve women's suffrage in 1869. Colorado, Utah, and Idaho were the leading states for women's equality. They all provided voting rights for women before the movement. California, Washington, Arizona, Kansas, Oregon, and Illinois quickly followed, approving women's rights over the next 5 years.
In 1890, two groups of suffragettes formed together to make the National American Women's Suffrage Association to fight for voting rights. While in 1913, Alice Paul formed Congressional Union, creating mass rallies and marches for public awareness and support. This drew younger generations, which helped push for federal equal rights amendments. The progress was slow in the fighting, but it was gaining ground, and riot groups had begun to form.
We want the vote. We want the vote. We want the vote. We need that.
Women that chose this path were considered by many rebels to society, and were leaving their natural positions. But the younger generation of women was the first that truly saw themselves as equals to their male counterparts. The Jazz Age led to the development of the flapper, a young single college or working girl who loved and was influenced by the Jazz Age and acted more provocatively. They would wear sleeveless tops, shorter skirts, and colorful attire. It was a staple for a flapper. The era of the flapper also opened up the window of being able to smoke and illegally drink in public without such an outcry.
Woman and smoking. Awesome!
Yeah!
These flappers were the first group of women that did not base their actions on the thoughts of men and enjoyed the jazz era to its fullest extent. The older generations didn't approve of the flapper lifestyle. They still believed strongly in women showing modesty and staying in their place. But this flapper generation led the way for women becoming considered equals and having the same roles as men. The 1920s marked the major victory in women's rights. On August 26, 1920, America granted women's suffrage and passed the 19th Amendment.
Let's go.
This amendment stated that the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. But this didn't change everything at once. A woman voicing her political opinion or pursuing a certain career was seen as a bold move that wasn't always approved of. To this day, some see women as less capable people in comparison to men, and the fight continues in most Western Asian countries. Over the course of the movement, women's roles dramatically changed and began to morph into what we see today. Although significant progress was made, women's roles were nowhere near fair or equal, and the minimum wage for women was still less than that of men. As the Great Depression of the 1930s was ushered in, many of the women's roles stayed the same. Many men suffered pay cuts and unemployment, and the women still kept up their duties of cooking, cleaning, and mending things around the house. Women who didn't have a husband or a man to support them, such as widows or divorcees, were forced to rather stay quiet and barely get by, or seek employment and risk being despised for taking jobs away from hard-working men. Although, some jobs couldn't be taken by men, such as nursemaids, cleaning women, or factory and clerical jobs that were already filled by women. This new employment change challenged previously defined stereotypes on women's roles in society. Women now single-handedly supported families, and more women worked alongside men. Roughly 25% of women were working by the end of the 1930s, and in 1939, the number of working women almost equaled the unemployment total. This did not mean women were seen as having equal roles to men. Many women had to get a full education to compete with men who only graduated from elementary school. Many companies in the 1930s exclusively hired men. During the Great Depression, women also achieved political gains. The rise of social welfare services in the New Deal, program to counteract the effects of the Great Depression, was dominated by women, which allowed women to hold higher government positions. From this point on, the roles of women slowly moved forward. Women started to be seen as equally valuable members of society. But, for every milestone met, huge inequalities remained. To this day, in some aspects, women's roles are not equivalent to that of men. But feminists, such as ourselves, work to rid the world of all white male scum and bring total equality to the planet. Thank you for tuning in.
It was a dream. Oh my god, are you okay, Silas?
Man, Nate, I'm okay. I just had a crazy dream.